You're now tapped into the Instinctive Midnight Theory, where culture meets creativity beyond the algorithm. I'm your host, King Esseen, cultural creator, creative visionary. Here we honor the past, build the future, and connect the dots in between. Let's talk legacy. Let's talk story. Let's talk truth. Welcome to the theory.
Jazzy John, my brother, welcome. Welcome also world to the Fresh and 79 King Esseen podcast. We've been fresh, we've been hanging, we've been live. This is our live where we get to talk to people within our community that we consider icons. Our icon for the week today is the illustrious, prolific, productive, Renaissance man of a wonderful friend and family member. His name is John. I want to call him Sir, John Crooms. I've been knowing the brother for 30 plus years, and he's done nothing but impress, guide, and inform me. And I had to have him on this series. John, thank you so much for being a part.
Thank you for having me. I love the fact that, I was like, oh, wow. Icon of the week. Yay. So.
But you've been steadfast, brother. You've always been inspired and contributing and, trying to catch a break for yourself, so, some time to rest. But, that's difficult for the inspired. I understand, brother.
Yeah, it's always something seems to be going on. And especially, I guess, this point in our lives, people are starting to maybe get it now with the history, I guess, that I've chronicled and like I said recently, the passing of Dres the Beatnik here in Atlanta, and then
God bless.
Yeah, rest in power of Dres, but I get a call, hey, can you find some pictures of him? And I'm like, oh, okay, and don't mind doing it, but I guess what people fail to realize is just the process of doing it and going through it. You got to look through every event, like, well, what was he at the spring flower frolic over at Piedmont Park? And go, there's picture Dres over there. Okay, my bad. So.
Right. No, I understand. I want to get into your history, but I'd like to start theoretically or conceptually with the subject of history. Because it seems like a conversation that we'll always revisit as friends. We'll get on the phone and we'll talk about, what about this? Can't forget this. Right. Do you remember this? What is the importance of history in our culture and community as you see it?
And, history tells our story, and it lets us know where we came from. I mean, it's so important to show who actually, who the people were who helped develop and create some things. Especially now in the era and the climate that we're in now, where it seems to be a new wave of quote unquote revisionism, on all fronts too. Like you've got the folks outside of our thing saying stuff, saying, "Oh, we need to get rid of this and get rid of that," and then we even got youngsters from our community who are saying things that you're like, "Huh? Where'd you get that from?" Oh, we gotta get rid of this. Get rid. It ain't about this. It was all about that. No, you weren't there. We were there. This is what happened, and be it a civil rights march to a DJ battle, we were there. I mean,
right. So. No, you're so right. And it's funny because I don't think a lot of us, because media seems to be the guiding force cross-generationally. Like I talked to some of my elders, and a lot of our elders won't even see how influenced they are by media. And then the youth are definitely controlled by media. It's just that we feel like because we're connected that we are the sole influencers of each other, which is not true. There's so many hands now in the pot that are affecting our thought process as well as the narratives, which seem to be creeping into our community, and we won't even see it coming. But those of us who've been around over the years can look at something and say, wait a minute, this doesn't come from us. This is politically charged, or it's just it's really interesting.
Right. And I guess, like, cats maybe from our generation, seeds were planted in us, and not necessarily supposed to say a dogma or a doctrine that was just pumped in, pumped into your heads, but the seeds were planted and we saw things, and then as things start to blossom, we start to see the connection or the family tree or the genealogy of something. So it's just like dance, for example. We was our parents might have had stormy weather on the TV or an old Sammy Davis Jr.
Right, Carmen Jones.
Right. And we watching them get down and stuff, watching the dancers do their thing. And then as we progress into the things that we got into, we start to see the connections. Oh, wait a minute. He getting down like, that's where Michael Jackson got that from. Oh, that's where, Rocksteady did, was inspired by this. That's where, Lace Twins got their moves. You could, and you see that it's all big one, nothing's new under the sun. It's all one, nothing's changed. It's the same thing, just going in circles,
Mm-hmm.
So we, and I know me and you do that a lot. Yeah, we'll see somebody do something like, oh yeah, they got that from such and such. It's new and innovative, but at the same time, it's also a celebration and an homage or tribute to what happened in the past.
Very true. Very true. Now let's talk about your past a little bit. For John Crooms, the story starts in North Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. Should I to be correct?
Right,
Or
I was born in Newark and then I was raised in East Orange. So for those who aren't familiar, I guess like East Orange is like East Point to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It's there, but and then there's some blurred lines, but they are two separate entities, but there's some blurred lines, and everyone's kind of
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. How did that context influence you as a human?
Being up in that area, I guess my parents definitely exposed me to some different things, as in like because being that close to New York City, even
Mm-hmm.
New York City being a cultural, just the cultural center of the world. My folks taking me to Broadway plays, showing me art. Like on my father's side's a very artistic, creative family.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where I was questioning myself because I didn't know how to draw or paint or anything. I was like, well, Dad, I guess it skipped over me and went other places and stuff. But I found my thing with photography and stuff. So my dad was a photographer for a minute, and two of my uncles were photographers. My Uncle David, they said that he chronicled some of the civil rights stuff that was going on in Newark at the time. And then my Uncle Michael, or his first name is Joe, but I always call him Uncle Michael. He's the youngest of my father's brothers, and so in the 70s and stuff, he was definitely heavily involved in the art scene in Newark, and he was actually the person who my father put a camera in my hand, but my Uncle Michael was the one kind of who like exposed me to some video stuff and some other technologies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that iconic photo that I feel like everyone has seen just because I've seen it, of you with a camera in your youth, and it's
Right.
you. It's
Right.
like you right now. You know what I mean? What were the circumstances behind that photo? Because it's a story in itself.
My dad took that picture, and I guess I was being 2 or 3 years old at the time, and he caught a picture of me. I mean, who knew that image would be very prophetic,
right?
And be because like I said, anytime anybody sees that, they just be like, damn, that's you. Like that someone just stretched you out now, and then boom, that's you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So between the time of your youth and arrival in Atlanta for college, were you pursuing any photographic pursuits? Did you have any sort of interest? Were you taking shots? And
I was dabbling. I really wasn't into it. I came down here to go to Morehouse, and I guess most of us who we got caught up into the the Morehouse mystique and the more we was trying to get those banking and finance jobs and stuff like
Right.
that. And it turns out that wasn't my thing, but I was always interested in history. And what I realized and recognized that even in high school, that like we're in a great time because a lot of the history that a lot of the modern history is all televised or televised or photographed and stuff. So I was just like, okay, I see that. And then I guess I was also, I would say, maybe inspired by a lot of the classic Blue Note photographs, from, the jazz photographs from Blue Note Records and stuff.
Oh, right. Yes, sure.
Right. Album covers and and then even the classic rock and roll, the black and whites of Chuck Berry and Little Richard, and then going through the Motown era and then the Woodstock era where now we're kind of psychedelic and Hendrix is live, Hendrix is in color and Sly is in color, you know what I mean, and Earth, Wind and Fire, Prince, Mike, so always been like the visuals always somehow interest me or intrigue me. So that's why so that's why I see like so even going to hip hop culture, at an early age or early time, I'm looking at hip hop through the like how people looked at people looking at those jazz photos of Miles Davis and such, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, and so forth. So I'm looking at I'm looking at a picture of Jazzy, Jazzy J doing the situation, or like I said, Rocksteady doing something. I'm looking at it all like in the same, it's like kind of like the same lens of how those cats from back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s was doing things.
Right. Yeah. Now, it's interesting you talk a lot about music because I know that you and I met in the music context because we were all, like you said, we were at Morehouse together. My brother, who introduced me to all of my friends who are a day older than me, he introduced me to you and Stan and Sean Littles. And, it's so funny because you all used to look at me like, just as all older dudes look at younger dudes, like, who's this younger dude talking? You know what I mean? Right. But my brother always gave me the opportunity to talk like, he, this is my little brother, but he has my approval. So yeah, he's allowed to talk amongst us. Right. So you all, after a while, our friendship started to develop more, but the bridge in our friendship was the discussion of music and culture. So it would be at Frederick Douglass Commons.
Oh yeah, the Commons and Yo MTV
with the rap. Videos, yeah.
The early days of Yo MTV Rap and Rap City and BET, and then it's wild because a lot of folks don't remember that there was a very the anti-hip hop movement was very strong and people weren't grasping for the culture like how they claim to grasp for it now. You walk into the Commons and ESPN was showing tractor pulls and you're like, yo, can you change the channel? I want to see that New York stuff. Yeah, like, come on, man, just change the channel. Trust me. Nah, I mean, we watching this. They cliff diving. What, you really interested? Right. So, I mean, that was. So, I mean, the accessibility of or just the exposure to the culture was I guess we were climbing mountains and uphill battles and stuff. I mean, it was like, trust me, if you just change the channel, I think you'll enjoy this.
Right.
And that's all that's all we're asking because, like I said, it wasn't readily available like that. When especially late 80s, early 90s, there was the kids had their station and we have ours. That was V103's little slogan for a long time.
Right. No rap.
Right. No rap. Right. No rap. No way. Even in school days, Spike Lee school days, the Gamma Rays, don't be playing that Yo Baby Yo Run DMC stuff up in So it's yeah.
Yeah, we were. It was still a very underground frequency and movement. We had to band together to have that support. And interestingly, with in a situation of scarcity where you don't have support, what ends up happening I noticed was a scarcity mentality where even within the culture, people will argue, you know,
Right.
Philadelphia rap is looked down upon by New York rap. New York and Philadelphia are looking down upon West Coast rap. West Coast rap
Right.
is
That's
looking
right.
down upon Southern rap, which was on the rise. But
Right.
everybody, we're all, as it relates to rap music or hip hop music, everybody, you know, not to sound corny like the record, but we were all in the same gang trying to emerge culturally at a time when it was not supported. So yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But
But now, mhm.
I was going to say it, but things progressed. A couple of years after that, that period, you and Soul Messiah started, got involved and started up the Zulu Nation chapter here in Atlanta,
Right.
and and that was a very we had some great times. But one thing is I appreciated you because you kind of understood or got me. Like, okay, we're going to document this thing. We're going to photograph our meetings. We're going to, and I always tell people like, and I was photographing stuff during that time where, again, this is all before pre-social media. People were paranoid. Wait a minute, who you taking these pictures for? Wait a minute, everybody was a CIA plant, or
Which was somewhat, there was, I don't know, I mean, as paranoid as we were, there was something to that because it was a new thing,
right,
organizing around
right,
hip hop
yeah,
or music culture. People were always seemed to have a little bit, outside forces seemed a little wary of that.
right.
But now I want to say something to the point that you just made. You said that I got you. I want to point out the first time that I actually saw you, because as said, we were emerging as friends. We're in school together. We're having talks in the commons. Brothers are coming by the room to check out what we young frosh are doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I remember going to a club to see, and I can't remember what DJ it was. It might have been Clark Kent, but I was up in a balcony area and I could see you and some other brothers, and you cut all the way loose. Dancing wise, you just spun. Boom, boom. And I was like, is that John? Because in my mind, I'm like,
Nah, he don't do that.
that's my brother. That's my man who nerds out with me in the comments. And then I had to think. And I said, wait a minute. I'm a nerd and I dance. Yeah, it makes sense.
Right.
So music is a big part of who you are. And I feel like it influences your craft. But that was a different facet because, as you said, we were dealing with Zulu Nation, with the hip hop culture, but there was also the dance and the disco side. And I feel like that relates a lot to your roots and reference point coming from Jersey too.
Yeah. Well, I keep saying, I always tell people again, that late 80s, early 90s time was a very beautiful time because that was, the early days of hip hop and house, per se, and then disco and the soul music and stuff was always there, but it was just like those early days and times of those genres. And then the fact of we went to an HBCU, Morehouse and the Atlanta University Center, so it was like, I always tell people, like, that's the one thing that made Atlanta kind of unique, because Atlanta has 4 black colleges, and every year you get like 2,000 to 3,000 kids from all over the universe, all over the black universe, coming to that point. So in the 80s and so the late 80s and 90s, here we are coming to this point where the New York kids got hip hop, but they also got, the club music, the disco and so forth. The Jersey kids, same thing. Go-go in DC, the West Coast hip hop in LA and the Bay Area stuff, and even the Southern stuff, which, this is pre-Outcast, but you know, Shy D's and the Magic Mikes and the Skywalkers and stuff, you know, when it was Miami based instead of, you know, and yeah, and also just, you know, like I said, the R&B, the SOS bands and the Janet Jacksons and all that was coming together, you know, and so it's like, yeah, I might be a house head, but you know, I bop my head to, you know, when Control came on, I bop my head to that, or
sure.
Yeah, or Prince, or even Mike, you know, or Michael Jackson and stuff. So it's I guess, yeah, I guess listening to or listening to those different genres kind of just kept me open, because you wanted to find out more and more and more, and then you again also you starting to hear the sounds kind of coming together and so forth. You know, like, yeah, you got the sampling and hip hop, but then you know you listen to Rhythm Nation, you're like, oh, that's Sly. Okay, that's, you know, you're starting to hear that everyone's throwing into the different pots of music.
Mm-hmm. So what we're discussing, to me, in my memory, as it relates to you, is right before it seemed like you turned the corner to becoming a full-time or full committed photographer. What caused you, what was the tipping point for you? What made you say, okay, I'm about to get into this, like, in a serious way, consistently?
I keep saying this, the infamous DJ battle at Earwax Records was the tipping point. Because that was Jazz and them had a DJ battle. His brother Shotgun. So you know, he was affiliated with the Zulus, you know, with Messiah and the rest of the crew. So you know, we was there to support him, and the record label rep from who helped promote and sponsored the battle. He was like, "Oh yeah, you taking pictures?" I was like, "Yeah, you know." And I was still this is my formative years of photography, because I just one day just went up and bought a camera. You know, bought a camera off of a coworker who was at the Art Institute, and I was like, "All right, cool." I was, you know, I want to do this because I was like, "Yeah, that'd be dope if I could." Because I was trying to figure out, because I couldn't rap. I'm no b-boy. I'm horrible. Can't even do that. I mean, no style and no graffiti style or DJing abilities. So I was like, I gotta say, oh, let me document this stuff, and that could be my contribution to the culture.
Right, got to contribute.
Right, and so yeah, did the DJ battle, shot it up, boom, 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 and the guy asked me, you know, well, how much for the pictures, and I told him like $100, which really ain't nothing, but to him, and you know, really ain't, yeah. So I told him $100. I'm figuring, well, shoot, you know, this a major label. This wasn't like, you know, no Ichiban or nothing like that. Remember Ichiban Records? Right?
Oh, right.
Right. This was a major this was a major label and stuff. And I'm like, you know, all right, how about $100? And he looked at me, and he said over the phone. He's like, what? Well, you think you from New York or something, man? I don't know. You know, he got up into that. You know, I ain't paying you that. All right, fine. You know, cool, no problem. I felt some kind of way. But then after that, I was like, all right, well, from now, you know, and I just started. I was like, I'll just give my heart away. I just started giving it away. You know, I don't remember back in the day, you still had prints. You used to always make prints up, and I would pass the prints out to people as I see them, like, you know, in the streets and everything.
This is pre-social media. This is how we did it.
I was the original Instagram. You know,
right. This is true.
You know, so yeah, and then and again, like I said, being involved with the Zulu Nation chapter, you and Messiah, I was like, yeah, you know, we doing this is something's happening here in Atlanta, and I at least want to, you know, try to contribute to this thing somehow, some way.
Right, a lot was happening.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it, but I wanted to focus a little bit on the influences on your approach or your style.
Well, like I said, you know, it was definitely a lot of, you know, looking a lot, like I said, the the classic black and whites of jazz musicians and rock and early rock and roll and stuff. So
right.
So I was trying to convey that passion of Little John playing the drums and comparing them to like a Max Roach, doing the same. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah, and so that's that was my thing, to just try to convey the passion and the thing of the art. So not just say I got a picture of somebody playing the guitar. No, you're gonna see and feel this cat hitting that riff. You're gonna see that try to get a picture of that singer or that MC. You feeling the vocals coming out of that mic and everything. So
and you have captured a lot of different sides of emotion, joy, grief, celebration. You've captured the whole gamut. How do you know when to press the shutter? And it's interesting because I watch you. Like I'm an observant person like you, we're both in the house because we always got to take it in so that we can come back and talk about it. But I'll watch things happen. And if you're around, I'll look to see if you're going to catch that. And it's funny how I'll see something and then I'll just look to you. And the next thing I know, I see you drawing your camera up. But I wanted to know from you, what is the trigger? Like, what is the thing that you have to see or feel?
I think it came from studying a lot of watching a lot of Soul Train, watching a lot of Don Kirshner's rock concert and Wolfman Jack, that type of stuff. And then it's just like, and even like, again, being a half-ass dancer at the party and stuff like that, an understanding of movement, an understanding of, just when that moment's going to be. So being that I've been to a few shows or a few concerts, you can kind of sense and feel when that person's about to, and then you like, all right, I'm gonna get this point. I'll be like 5, 4, 3, bam, got it. I snipe a lot of pictures, meaning, like how a sniper be like in the woods 3 miles away and just wait. Yeah, sometimes I'll just post up and be like, okay, this is about to happen. Just now, right.
That's pretty deep.
Watching kids dance and stuff, I'm like, okay, the hands are gonna come up now, boom, boom, and I guess that's because, like I said, doing what I used to do back when I was a younger person. So
you still do it.
And on the knees, brother, can't do the knees in the back. Oh, Lordy.
That's bruh. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
So once again, it seems like music is a recurring aspect of your inspiration as it relates to your craft. There was a time where you invested a lot of energy into the curation of a legendary record store, Red Beans and Rice. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with that?
Red Beans and Rice was a great experience for me. That was a record store here in Atlanta. So back in the 90s, we had, so everybody gives credit to Earwax and Jazz. And Jazz was the foundation. Jazz was pretty much the foundation. But then you also had, you had Lion's Den with Ariel.
Very true.
You had Vibes Music and More in Decatur with Jay Warren.
Brother,
You had Tobago had a spot. What was his name? DBS Sounds. But then it was Red Beans and Rice. And Red Beans and Rice was a a cultural center. I mean, anything dealing with, Black music, it was up in there. And James, the owner, was rest in peace. He passed away about in 2017. But he was a very, very, very passionate person especially coming with Black culture, because he was one of those cats who was like, he was angry that other folks and forces would come in, take it over, and then tell us what try to tell us what culture is, what culture was. So very, very passionate, and some of that passion rubbed up on me, where I was like, and that was like part of the education, like, okay, I see this, I'm seeing, this is some, the stuff we have here is a treasure, and it was all it was mostly vinyl. There were CDs, but James was also, like I say, he loved, he could talk to you about, jazz and funk from the 70s, but he was also one of the forces in the city that brought forth the quote unquote acid jazz, UK soul, or neo soul sound to the city.
Mm-hmm.
James was the one who broke Omar to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Incognito. The interesting thing with, always tell folks what makes Atlanta very unique for a city this, because for a long time Atlanta used to get laughed at and people would roll their eyes if you say anything about Atlanta, but Atlanta had an interesting infrastructure that a lot of the cities didn't have. I mean, we had the radio stations, we had CLK, RFG, Album 88. We had the events, FunkJazz Kafé, Chocolate Soul, Second Saturday,
Yin Yang.
Universal Cool, So we had the events where you can go, so you had the radio where you can listen. You had the events you can go experience the sounds. And we had the venues, Yin Yang, Kaya, what's that place? Variety Playhouse, Ethiopian Vibes and stuff.
Very important.
The Royal Peacock. And then we also just had, we had retail and Red Beans and Rice, Earwax, Lions Den, Vibes. So we had spots so you can experience, you could come experience, check out what was hip, what was happening, and then you had places to go to purchase the stuff. So you didn't have to go all the way up to New York or to Chicago or whatever, or even Tower Records, because these were black-owned stores that had that we had it and we was putting it out there, So,
right.
Yeah. Right.
See, what I'm noticing consistently as it relates to your passion is a passion for archiving and archives.
Right.
Because when you think about what a vinyl record is, it's an actual record. It's a sonic record, but it's history. It's encapsulated. It's a lot like a book, but channeled in a different way through turntable, or whatever mechanism is going to summon the sound from it. With a book, of course, we read. With visuals, it's sight. And it seems like that is a passion of yours. And it brings us back to what we started the conversation on, which is history. History is a big thing for you. It creates awareness. Am I wrong? Or
no, you're right. And it's especially with the stuff that I was photographing. I mean, because again, Atlanta wasn't looked at or viewed upon that they didn't think we was doing things like that. They thought in Atlanta we were still, Green Acres and stuff,
right behind.
Right. And always one of my favorite stories I always tell people is like, I was down in Miami one year for the Winter Music Conference, and this is back when I still carried pictures, and actually like I would break my pictures up so from the year before, so I ran into you the following year. So there was these two girls I met from New York, and they were we was chilling somewhere, and and so one of them was looking through the pictures, and she's just like, okay, I've been to Atlanta, but where are these people at? This is going on in Atlanta? I'm like, yeah, it's all Atlanta. Like, and they're like, where are these people? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I can't. I was like, oh yeah, when you came down, you probably went to, and then Crow's Nest or 20 grand.
Went here as opposed to there, right?
Oh, yeah, right. You didn't have somebody to point you in the right direction. But yeah, this is going on in Atlanta, and people, they can question it, but we had the physical proof and the evidence. This is what's going on. This is what we do. They're looking at the fashion, they're looking at the hairstyles, they're looking at looking at the venues, looking at the people who are in the venue. They're like, well, where are these people at? These these are the people I want to be next to. So
right. Yeah. We had the culture. See, and that brings me to a great day in Atlanta. Something inspired that. And it's such a great project and concept. Please tell me what inspired that for you and how that came together.
Jazzy Jeff, he did I forgot who brought him in, but Jazzy Jeff came to Atlanta and played at this restaurant called Echo. and it wasn't like a big blowout jam, but it was like all the right people were there, and then pretty much every DJ in the city, regardless of level, so from the big room like Kemet and the radio DJs, Greg Street, all them cats, to to the college radios DJs, to the college DJs, to the guys who might be playing records in their bedroom. Every DJ came out to watch and give homage to Jazzy Jeff. And I didn't realize how dope Jeff was. I'm sitting there watching like, wow, just blown away. And then there was a few people who were there. And then at the end, because I was like, wow, that'd be dope to get everybody together with Jeff in the middle. And that didn't work out. But I did get a small DJ group shot. And I was like, yeah, that'd be dope to get everybody together. Boom, boom, boom. And I was like, yeah, like that picture in Harlem, And I think I was walking. I was in Little 5 Points. And I ran to Kimmy Bennings. And, Kimmy, we were both we were talking and we both realized we were thinking about the same thing, and because Kimmy was big in the spoken word scene, I'm known, I guess, more as mostly DJs know me because, again, working at Red Beans, I sold everybody. We tried to get everybody together, again, like I said, pre-social media, so it was like phone calls and emails and word on the street, that's how we get. So the first time we did it, nobody showed up, like 2 or 3 people. We're like, okay, we're going to try this again. And we met on the steps of Woodruff Library. And, first time we met at Woodruff Library, the second time we tried it. And that's when everybody showed up. We chose Woodruff Library because, the AU Center is one of the major catalysts of this culture, because a lot of people, and like I said, you can look at some of the Atlanta music scene now, and it's basically a who's who of what school they went to. Jamal Doc at Morehouse, Drama from CAU, Mars from CAU. The Super Friends and all. Everyone, it's. I felt like it was a central location. It was easy to get to, and again, what the AUC contributed to the culture. So we showed up. We did the picture. It's a beautiful shot. You were there, so some people missed it, but that's just again. This is all the for the turnout that we had for it to be the era before social media. I was thoroughly impressed. I didn't realize that then, but realizing now, it's like so, and we got together all the quote unquote, well, most of the movers and shakers of the progressive underground scene in Atlanta. I say most because people to this day people still stop me in the street. Hey, we're gonna do another picture. I'm like, we're working on it.
Right. How did you feel having so many creatives together in one place? Did you feel that energy? Yeah, that was something special. That was something special. Even the 2 reunions that we had, one in 2013 and one in 2023. Yeah, you feel it. You see all, and you also see everybody's evolution. We look at the one for 2003, and then you compare what's going on in 2023. How people have evolved, improved on their stuff, made their stuff. Some folks have stepped out into other cities and other places and doing really big things. So yeah. That's the other great thing about Atlanta. Atlanta's a great stepping stone. A lot of, there's a few folks, there's a bunch of folks. You're like, oh yeah, I remember them. They're, That's right.
He's come to Zulu meetings back when he was young. Look at him now.
It's incredible. You're so right. What's something that you would think that a lot of outsiders don't understand about the city's depth creatively?
I guess it's just they just don't know what's here. Just period. I mean, I remember those days, especially like those early days of photography, where it's like cats are going up to New York to get New York cell phones just to have a New York number, so people would take them seriously to make some, to make some money. Jermaine Dupri, I caught a clip of him on a blog on a podcast. And he was complaining about how when So Def first came out, that nobody wanted to cover him. No, like the New York hip hop press didn't want to cover. So they would make him like pay to fly journalists and artists, journalists and photographers into the city to cover his acts. And I looked at that and I was like, nah, we were here. Y'all just, the people around you just didn't want to give, they weren't giving us the love and the respect.
Mm.
We were here, we was doing it, but nobody was, there was photographers here. I mean, Sean Dardell, Sean Coke, Sheila Turner, Pam Waller, Spark St. Jude. There were journalists here. Your brother, Kenji Jasper. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Sonia Murray.
Sorry, Sonia Murray. Right? There'll be, people were here. But y'all weren't, or maybe y'all just didn't know.
Yeah.
And,
maybe that's it.
Yeah. I'll just notice that shift to the eyes. We'll leave that
alone. How do you stay grounded as a storyteller when so much the industry, for lack of a better term, is so much about chasing the spectacle, what's happening now,
I don't know. How do I stay grounded? Maybe because I never got into the chase.
Right.
One thing I would say, like the subject matter that I do shoot, like, because some people are like, well, yeah, you seem to be more of a dance or house music oriented photographer. You don't do much hip hop. And that's because there was less politics in house music during those early days compared to hip hop. I mean, again, pre-social media, you couldn't roll up in the Essos or the Phoenix or the Warehouse with a camera and a flash and all that. Who you with? What's going on? Hold on. What magazine you with? You with the Source? You're doing all those types of politics where, like, a funk jazz, you just walk on in, do your thing,
Right.
Go up to Jason Orr and show him the pictures and what he likes. What he likes, he'll grab and boom, that's that. So I mean, but like what during the early days with the hip hop stuff, those clubs, and yeah, I've been turned away from many of spots. Sorry, you can't come up in here. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So
what would
go on.
What would you like people to remember about your work 50 years from now?
I had I guess my style or whatever, but an uncanny ability to capture that moment. Capture that moment, capture that joy, capture that, the essence or the vibration. Like, you see my pictures, when you see my pictures, you're going to be like, where was this at? And why wasn't I there? And how do I get back? how can I get to there?
I can definitely dig it.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to young photographers who want to document the culture today?
Just keep shooting. It's a process. You're gonna have some. Hold on. Sorry. Brother Real had his. So I put my timer on. So.
Nah, it's no problem.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah. Just there's gonna be some ups and downs. There's gonna be people that gonna BS. Gonna BS you and lie to you. There's gonna be people that they're gonna be sincere. Just keep doing it. I mean, right now it might not seem like nothing, but and it's wild because like same thing. I was trying to when I first started, I was trying to figure out what was going on, and why am I doing this? Do I need to keep doing this? Is this really gonna pop off? Do you think this might turn into something? And then I guess when I started seeing when I saw like those pictures of especially early hip hop, the Joe Conzos, the Cooper stuff, Ernie Panicoli, Jamel Shabazz, especially Jamel Shabazz, when I saw like the back in the day stuff, books, I was like, oh, okay, I get this. I think I and then even like on the dance level scene, there was a cat named Moema, who used to do bounce. He had a site called Bounce FM. This is back in the Deep House Pages days, and he would post pictures up of. So I was like, okay, I see people are chronicling and documenting, and of course you gotta give a shout out to Gordon Parks and James Van Der Zee.
Sure.
But it's definitely, huh?
I said giants,
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, it helps you realize that there is, it might not be now, but later on, folks are gonna really see and appreciate what you're doing, what you've done, and long as you keep it, keep it level. Don't be hyped up. I mean, yes, there's gonna be some other shooters who are going to blow up and be that person for the minute. And I say the minute because I've seen a few cats for the minute, and now they're kind of like, it's kind of cooled off or plateaued for them. So, but just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Don't worry about the hype. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the, if you got a love and a passion for it, it'll come out in your work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about, and now it seems like when I look on social media now, everybody's a celebrity photographer and everybody's a, that, and that's nice. That's dope. You got the whatever, whoever the hottest rapper of the moment for today is on your stuff, and that's cool. But then at the same time, I'm hearing photographers who are hanging with whoever's hot for the moment, crying about, I had to chase this dude, for 6 months just to get my little, get my little nickels.
Right.
And, I'm tired of shooting this. I don't want to shoot this no more, But you would. Yeah. I think those people might have went into it because of the hype of it all, and not of the, not the art form or.
Now, something I almost forgot, but I wanted to make sure we talked about. You've always been very intentional about capturing the Atlanta community outside of Atlanta when it was doable, whether it was going to Winter Music Conference and capturing us there, or at Rocksteady Crew or Zulu Nation Anniversary. You always wanted to make sure that you captured what was happening, but also us in the mix. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I guess I came from just, you guys were always my subject matter. And I mean, by you guys, I mean the Atlanta community. So you want to show us I want to also show us participating in the culture and stuff. So yeah, we're at an event, trying to think of our start. Yeah. So if we went to a Zulu Nation Anniversary or Rocksteady, we'll show, Atlanta was there. And then here we are participating there, Winter Music Conference, because house music was big in New York and Chicago. No, Atlanta was there too during Winter Music Conference, and here the people from Atlanta doing their parties or doing their events and stuff. Where now everybody's looking at Atlanta now. Everyone wants to come to Atlanta and play. So, showing us participating in it just shows again how we are a part of it, and we are real to it. This is not some passing fad for us.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. Yeah. I feel like my son's about to roll in from summer school, so I wanted to catch this last tidbit from you. Every photo shot is, or if every photo is a protest or every shot is a prayer, what would you say your prayer or mantra is for the future of Black visual storytelling?
Our prayers, like I said, keep doing it. Just
keep doing it.
We have a unique story or a unique situation, and I mean, now it's like I said, it's so much easier for some access and be accessibility, because now we have, again, it's social media. Everyone's got a cell phone, and that cell phone's got a camera. How many times you shoot, you could be walking to the store or something like that, or walking through Kroger, and then you see somebody with their phone out doing something silly or doing, everyone's so keep doing it, keep documenting. Who the people are. Point out who the people are in the culture. and just be consistent, keep doing it. A lot of people said, again, a lot of doors were closed on me, but me consistently doing this for 30 years, some of those doors have opened now. Yeah, I've seen you've been doing this for a minute. Yeah, I check, now, especially now with Facebook, Instagram, and all the other platforms. Sorry, people can look at your, people can look at your stuff and see, oh, well, okay, this cat might be a little serious. Let me try to deal with them. Compared to you just clout chasing, you just want to, get backstage and smoke weed with us, that type of deal.
Dig it, brother. John, thank you so much. You've been such a valuable asset as a friend and as a guide. I can't even tell everyone how much you've steered me in the right direction and brought me into spaces and introduced me to people, some of, my best friends to this day, and important mentors of mine. And that's invaluable. I can't put a price on it. You're such a valuable asset to the culture and the community, and we're honored to have you as our icon of the week and as a part of our Fresh in 79 live series. Thank you so much, my brother, and keep doing it.
Thank you, sir. I just pushed the button. That's all I do. Y'all running from my lens. I just pushed the button.
See, but what we did is we got all behind that and talked about what was involved.
Right. I just push the button, click, and then but thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm one day I'm gonna go through all these dang pictures and do something like a book or two. Because I forgot to mention I did 4 or 5 books already.
That's true, you have.
Yeah. Well, no.
And we're gonna make sure that everyone is able to connect with you so they can get those books.
Yeah. Or at least 3. No, 3. Yeah. 3 or 4 books. Yeah, I've done that. Self-published. So
that's right.
I'm the. I guess one thing I learned from the South is the independent rapper selling it out the trunk of your car. I'm the guy that's like, well, I got a book. Hey, check it out. Okay. Those who know those. Yeah.
And you got shirts too.
Oh, I forgot. Yes, the shirt. I don't have it on, but yeah. I'm starting to put some of my images of known and unknown local Atlanta heroes and other folks, and some wearable art for the folks.
Well, that's awesome. Well, once again, John, thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you for having me, sir. And
thank you for being a part.
Cool, and we will speak. Looking
forward to that.
Yes,
as
sir.
Always.
Yes.
Take care. Peace, world. Thanks for being a part of this.
And next time
I'll do a
demonstration, next time.
Oh, yeah, we need a demonstration. My brother, peace and love.
All right, peace, bro.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Instinctive Midnight Theory. If you heard something that moved you, share it, tag it, build with it. Culture only grows when we grow it together. Until next time, stay fresh, stay rooted, and keep your story in motion.